just a quick review. So, all right. So, slightly more complicated than our last HTML, but it's nothing crazy. Have you seen something like this before?
Yep. Something like that.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we've all written something like that.
Okay,
For our
right. Why do we do something like this? Order is important for sure.
Styling.
Styling, yes.
Simplicity.
Okay, simplicity. In what way?
Giving everything a class, all the divs a class, makes it a little bit simpler. So that
Right. It becomes a lot more readable for sure, right? Indentation becomes really important, and that's what I want to highlight right here. Indentation becomes really important because if something goes wrong and you see your code like this, can you figure that out? Can you figure out which one of those tags is broken, it doesn't have an end? No, right? That's crazy. Also, just a quick introduction. I'm very much into like participation. So the more you participate, the more you'll learn. And I really mean that. So, great. One of the things you can do is in VS Code, you can go under your settings. I think it's Command K, Command comma, and you can learn how to add these lines in. These are going to be really important. So you can see this div very quickly, not just with the indentation, but following this line, you can see where it closes. All right, so that your HTML doesn't really break. And then we just have this other div here that's sitting on the side, and then ultimately we have these two script tags. So how are we feeling just in terms of seeing this and then understanding what is getting rendered on the page? All right, cool. All right, so this is what I want to start with. The idea is that if we kind of open this, boop, 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 boop. All right. The idea is that your whole page is just HTML. Your browser will download that HTML and then put it in a particular order based on your HTML. It will style it based on your CSS, your styling, and then it will add behavior based on your JavaScript. So let's actually talk about how it kind of builds, what you see here. The idea is that we talked about this right here, and that is this elements page. And you could see as I highlight over things, it's going to tell me what they are. So if I go here, you'll see like this H1 internet memes. I can even go down to the span, highlight this H1 child, and that should highlight the H1 on the page. So this whole thing, right, is known as the DOM. So what does the DOM stand for? What is the DOM?
Document object model. Jinx.
Double jinx, triple jinx, just kidding, yeah. Right, the document object model. So what does that really mean? This whole thing, right, is just a document, right? I want to say object means that every single thing in the document will map to an object so that JavaScript or CSS knows how to deal with it, right? Once you have a JavaScript object, then you can do JavaScript things to it. In terms like the model, it needs to understand like this is how it takes all of your HTML and then downloads it and then creates what is known as the DOM. So each one of these are pieces that we can interact with JavaScript. So here we're looking through, and the way we could describe it is I'll give you guys a lecture, I want to say like sometime in week 3, about introducing you to Big O. Very slowly, there's tiny little bits of computer programming and computer science that we've embedded into the curriculum. And if you're not paying attention, they're very sneaky and they come in very fast. So one of the first things I want to talk about is different types of data structures. So we know about hashes, right? We know about like arrays. There's something called linked lists that we haven't really talked about. But one data structure that I want to introduce is known as a tree. So a tree in computer science, right? Not like obviously a Christmas tree or the things that give us air, the rainforest, is a data structure that represents some sort of hierarchical, did I say that right? Does anyone know how to say it? Thank you. Hierarchical, yes, structure where there are parent nodes, there are child nodes and sibling nodes. And trees, essentially, as a data structure, look like upside down trees. Here's what I mean. Oh man, you can't see that at all, can you? Oh, there we go. That's not bad. So the idea is that there's some sort of parent node, node number 2. The numbers mean absolutely nothing. They're just for reference. So if I say node 5, you know what I'm talking about. And this right here is known as a binary tree, right? Why would it be called binary tree? Yes, each node will only ever split into 2 potentially, right? So 2 splits into
2.
yes, but more specifically, which ones?
7 and 5.
7 and 5, right? That being said, that's just like how you can understand it. Now, the DOM, right, is not going to necessarily be a binary tree. Each one of these nodes can split into as many nodes as they want, but you can think of it this way, right? So 2 goes into 7 and 5, and just looking at it visually, understanding how many children does node 2 have? 2, right? That being said, what is the sibling to node 7? 5, right? So just looking at it, you can kind of very easily visualize what's happening. And if you take a look at this example here, you have like your body tag, right? And this body tag is holding all of these divs and these 2 script tags, right? I've simplified it for you, naturally. And this body tag has how many children?
1.
1, right? Which is this div. This div has how many? 3. And then this p tag has how many siblings? 6?
2.
2. The h1 and the ul are siblings of this p tag. Now here's an important thing. This emphasis tag. How many siblings does this emphasis tag have?
0.
0. Right? Cousins, yes, but cousins don't exist in trees. I've said that before. Yeah, cousins don't count, unfortunately. They do in like law. You know what I'm saying? Alright, just kidding. Anyways, so yeah, the emphasis tag has no siblings. So it's just a way to kind of describe and understand how the HTML is built and what the DOM really is, and it's built in a tree structure. So if we take a look at this, right, how many siblings does this div have for outer node?
0.
That's right, 0, right? But how many children does this div have? That's correct, 1. And so like that's how you can start to look at and reference these things, and they're going to be very important. So the first thing we want to do is talk about how we're going to essentially build this feature. So the idea is that I have this website, and it's, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of boss. The CSS took a long time to build, but that's fine. So what I want to do on my website is I want to build this memes website, right? Obviously, just look at me like a walking meme. I want to build a memes website, and I want to add a bunch of memes to my page. So now, who here feels comfortable and they know how to build this feature? Who does not know how to build this feature?
What are you asking?
Either you don't or you do.
Which feature?
The feature of adding images to this website, but using JavaScript. Who feels like I could do this? Okay, good. Let's reveal our votes. Wow, good to go, right? But that's okay, because the idea is that I want to teach you how you can learn, how you can teach yourself. And like I mentioned earlier, you're often not going to know how to build features, and you're going to get assigned to them. But we can use the power of logic and kind of think through what's happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up my JavaScript file, right? And I'm going to show you a couple things. So the cool thing is with console log, you can actually see a couple things. So I'm going to switch to my console, and you'll see, oh, look, hello world in orange. If I change this to red, I can change it to red, and then I can change this to goldenrod, which is a cool color. The idea is that you can color code your console logs so that if you have multiple, you can kind of help you debug your code. We're going to talk about debugging and how we can debug in JavaScript as we get through more and more like features and functionality. So how are we feeling about the DOM so far? The DOM's a tree, right? Siblings, child nodes, good to go.
What's up with that percentage C?
Okay, that's my fault. So if you actually want to add color, you can prepend, right, %C, to the string that you want to see, and then you have to give it a key value for like your CSS property. So I'm just going to add some color to it. Cool. All right. Is that good? I'm sorry about that. Awesome. So what I want to do now is I want to slap a bunch of dank memes right onto my website. How can we do that? What in English sort of makes sense to you in terms of like how you should be approaching this problem? It's kind of like a hard thing to ask, right? Let's just say I have images already, right? Like so, for example, let's go to my dankmemes.js. Let's pull one of these images, and let's see what they are. I actually have this, right? And this is where I normally live, and that's okay. I'm not obviously cute and adorable, but yes, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I have these images already, right? Whether they're on Bookface, they're on Twitter, they're in like a storage hard drive somewhere, they exist. And I want to be able to add them to my website using JavaScript.
Why would you want to use JavaScript to add images to a website?
What a great question. Why would I want to add images to my website using JavaScript?
I understand like infinite scroll, but like your website.
Yes, I can easily hard code those images in. Absolutely. But the feature that I want to teach you is how can I add it in with JavaScript, because JavaScript's event driven, right? If somebody clicks something, bam, I want something to happen. Like if I click something, I want an image to pop up, right? Or if I'm on like a timer website, if I click this, the timer starts counting down. I have to wait until something happens, the user does something, and then I fire off a function. So the beginning of understanding how to manipulate the DOM is going to be with like just maybe like slapping something on it, adding a p tag. P tags are kind of boring, so I want to like slap an image on there.
So we need some sort of an event to happen.
Potentially, but the idea is before the event, we just got to be able to learn how to do it.
Just put it on there.
Yeah, just put it on there. So, cool, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right, so the idea here is if I want to add something to my website, let's think through, just in plain English. The first thing I need is the image, right? We've talked about that, cool? And let's say that's the image, got it. Now, where do we want to add, it's my last name. Where do we want to add this image? Where on this page would make sense for this image to go? Wow, how delightful. Right? There's literally a line that says add image here. But where is that? Where can I find that? Is that in the JavaScript or in the CSS? Yes, it's on the DOM, but where's the DOM being built from? Where is it coming from? The HTML. The HTML. Yeah, the HTML. So where on the HTML makes sense in terms of where those images should be added? Okay, in the container div, right? Cool. Let's take a look. So I'm just going to do this. So this is where I want to add them. So far, so good. All right? And now the question is like, great, how do I add an image? Who knows how to do it? Me neither. Oh, what's up? Are you familiar with it? Oh yeah, absolutely. Are you familiar with it? Right, yeah, that's why I want to go over it. And so the idea is that like, oh my goodness, I want to add image to page JavaScript. Okay, adding images to HTML document with JavaScript. Wow. My God. Did I? This was 9 years ago, so no, I did not. But wow, 9 years ago. Oh my God. Okay, so the first thing it looks like, this person asked this question, and they've got a couple things in here. I'm like, okay, cool. So it looks like I have to somehow create this image, change the source. I don't know what this does, and then something with a pen child. This looks like the number one answer, right? Unless there's a better answer. No, this looks like the number one answer. Cool. This is like simulating kind of like what your workflow would be like in real life, right? And so you're kind of like, okay, cool. I have to do some create image. I don't even know what this does, this create element. So I'm just gonna look it up. But where would I look it up for anything JavaScript related?
The docs.
But what are the docs?
MDN does.
Document.create element MDN. Wow, bless up. Let's find out what this is. In HTML, document.create element creates an HTML element specified by a tag name. Okay. So it looks like, all right, if I want to add an image, how would I do it just hard coding in HTML? What would I do? Anchor tag? What does the anchor tag do?
What does it do?
Yeah.
I don't know, a single anchor tag, but with a reference.
I think the anchor tag is more like a link, like the A tag.
Oh,
It
right.
creates a link, right? So if I wanted to, the idea is I would do image source. So I somehow need to create this in JavaScript, right? Because I can't go into my HTML directly in this sort of like JavaScript only world. So I need something like that. And so using this document.create element, this allows me using JavaScript to create that image tag. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm just gonna write out the steps, right? So how do I add an image? Well, the first thing is I need to create the image tag. Because in order to add something to HTML, you have to add HTML to HTML, right? I can't just go in here in my HTML and start writing Ruby like def method and then just like writing like, oh, whatever, this cool method. That'd be crazy because this is an HTML file. It can only understand and accept HTML. So I need to add HTML to HTML. So in order to add this image tag, I have to create it first. So the first thing is I need to create this image tag, and it looks like document.create element. Cool. Boom. And it takes some arguments, right? What the tag name is. So what's the tag name that we're trying to create? Yeah? I think so. What do y'all think? Okay. Okay. So just like this? Exactly. Exactly. I need to create this image. Do I have a reference to this on this next line? On line 14, do I have a reference to this brand new, newly created image tag? No. So I need to make a reference to it. So should I be doing this? What? Why not? We don't like var, right? For a lot of reasons. But should it be let?
No.
Why const?
If you want to stay the same, you want it to be altered.
Right. I never want this image tag to somehow change into a string, right? Or whatever it is. I'm going to create this image tag, and it's going to stay an image tag, because that would have crazy behavior on my website. So const is definitely the move. Great. So const image, I'm creating this image. The cool thing is you can test your code by literally doing this. Do you guys like binding pry in Ruby? Do you enjoy that very much?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it very much.
Was it useful to you?
Yes.
Okay, cool. This is how you add a debugger in JavaScript. Wow. Bless up. So if I go back to my website, if my dev tools are not open, it will never fire. All right. However, once my dev tools are open, you'll notice that I get paused in the debugger. Cool. You can either jump from here into console, but if you enjoy seeing sort of this code here, if you enjoy seeing it, then if you press escape, you can actually get a small, you can get a small little console on the bottom, on top of your code. Yeah, wow. Great. So that being said, where is the debugger pause? What line?
16.
Okay, cool. Do I have access to image? Is it within scope?
Yep. Yeah.
Great. So what is image? It's just an image tag, right? Exactly like we think it is. I've just created this brand new image tag. So the idea is we talked about the HTML and that we wanted to essentially recreate this. Inside the image, what do we really need? What does the image tag hold? What attributes or properties of the image tag are important to actually get an image? A link to the image, the source, the SRC specifically. So is there a way to access the source with this image object? We can, but I want to show you something. So if we console log, right, image, we simply get a log of it. I can do a lot of things with console, like warn. Oh my god, image, warning. I can even fake and force an error. There's a lot of cool things. There's console table, but one of the most important things that I want to show you is something called console dir. What console dir will do is shows you all the properties of an object. And here's what I mean. Let's actually open this Bad Johnson up a little bit. Bloop. Ooh, 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 spicy. There's a lot of properties here. And what property do we say was really important that we should be looking at for the image tag? The source, right? What else is on here that might be super important? That's kind of cool. Maybe the alt, right? Anything that has to do with this image tag is listed here. And if they are just objects, how do you access properties of an object in JavaScript? With key value pairs, right? With the key, right? So if I wanted to see, for whatever reason, what is the, they're all nulls. Great. Okay. If I wanted to see what the namespace URI is, how can I do that? Right. If this is just an object, image.namespace URI. I'm sorry. I think it's all lowercase. What was it?
You call the variable image.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Thank you. Namespace. Look at this. Wow. So powerful. Namespace URI. And it actually will return that value. I can reassign key value pairs by changing it to some website, right? bomb.com. Whatever it is. So what do we actually want to change here? The source. And what's the current source right now? It's empty. So let's reassign it to what? Maybe like a dank image? Cool, I have one. I have one here. Boop. Cool. And so I want to change this image to here. What do I expect to happen once I change the image source? What will happen once I fire this? Will I see anything on the page?
No.
Why? That's a good guess. Not exactly correct, but very good. Very close. Why did nothing appear on the page?
Because we didn't put in the HTML.
I didn't actually add it to the HTML. I simply changed the source. Right? So let's make sure that we're keeping up to date, we're tracking. Create an image tag, right? And then I'm going to update the src attribute to the image that I want. Now I need to do man, where is it? There it is. All right, now I need to slap it on the DOM, right? I need to add it to the website. That's what I need to do now. I have the image tag, it has the proper source, I need to add it. So we know where we want to add it. Do we have access to this container right now in JavaScript? Do I have the object as a reference anywhere? No. How can I get that object reference? Does anybody know? Right. So there's a couple ways we could do that. And so I'm actually going to scroll down to this powerful cheat sheet that I've made for you all. There's a couple ways to do that. So remember, the DOM. Everything on the DOM is an object, which means in JavaScript you can actually query those objects and have access to them. There's a few ways. The old and original way is document. You literally ask the document, the entire document, I need to get an element by its ID. This returns a single element, which is like the object, and this is sort of like a reference for it. You can grab elements by class name. Will this return 1 or more, or potentially 0?
Why would we have that class name?
Right, however many have this class name, which means it returns a collection.
Is that an array?
it is technically not an array. It is a collection. That's why it's important for me to break this down. What about get elements by tag name? How many will this return potentially? Right, more than one. So like these things are named very specifically. What about query selector? Right, it'll only return a single element. So what's the difference between query selector, get element by ID, and get elements by class name? How do I know what I'm grabbing in the query selector? Exactly. All right, so what is element here? So element just means that you can actually query select under any one of these DOM nodes. So like if I wanted to go inside container, I can do container.querySelector and then only look inside the container. If I use document.querySelector, I can technically query the entire document. So we could see what the document actually is by just doing document. And you can see when I highlight over it, it's literally the whole thing. So if I want to query select something and I want to, like we talked about, get access to this div, specifically this one right here, what attribute does this have that's important to us?
The ID.
The ID, right? So let's actually continue here. So we have document, and we want to run this query selector. And as some of you might have mentioned, in order to understand what you're about to grab, you can either use the dot notation, which indicates a class. So let's take a look at what we have here available to us. I don't think I have any classes like an idiot. Oh, wait, yeah, I do. Semantic. Cool. So if I do document.querySelect and I put semantic, I get that div. I get access to this div right here. If I wanted an ID, how would I do it again? Pound hashtag, yep. Container. And that's going to give me, and you could see it highlight over there, exactly what I'm trying to grab. So if I do that, I'm actually grabbing. You can prove and verify what the node you're actually grabbing. That being said, do you have a reference to this? No, so I should probably do something like const and then name it. What do you want to name it? Kevin. Hmm?
Lunch.
Lunch? I'm always hungry. Great. And then we can basically run this query. So now if I take a look at lunch, did I spell it wrong? Did it do it on a different line? What the? Did you see that? Let me not paste that thing in. That was bizarre. That is weird. I remember now. It's been a long time since I've done this. The dev tools do not play nice with let and const. I forgot about that. I also forgot why, but I will send you all an article as to why. The dev tools are not perfect, but they're actually pretty good. So I'm just going to use var for the dev tools. Cool? All right, so we have lunch here. And what do we want to do to lunch? If we take a look back at our Stack Overflow, we've created the element. We've changed the source. And then there's finally something like append child. So the idea is that we're grabbing some sort of element, and then we're going to append a child to it. So if we go back to our page, right, we now have access to the element we want to add to. Right? We updated it. We want to slap it on the DOM. So we want to grab the element we want to add to. So here, we wanted to basically do this const lunch equal to document dot query selector, and we wanted to grab the container, right? That's what we're doing. I don't know why I commented that. And so now that we have the element we want to add it to, we want to add this image to lunch. So following just the Stack Overflow again, there's something called append child as a method. Let's take a look at append child MDN. Great. So I have this append child, and all I'm doing is, what does it really do? Let's read the documentation. It's a method that adds a node to the end of a list of children. Okay? If the child is given a reference, it moves to the current position to the new position. The idea is that when I run append child in my HTML, if I add it to the container, how many children are in this container right now? So if you read the docs, it will add it to the end of all the children. So we'll add it to the bottom of add images here. And will it be a child of add images, or will it be a sibling? It will be a sibling, exactly. So let's just kind of finish up this code and see what happens. If I were to do lunch.append child.
Is that the right one, though? The query selector? Put outer node.
Oh, you're right. We can leave outer node, but I appreciate you. Great, and what do we want to add here? The image, right? The image we just made. What did I call it? AIMG? And let's take a look to see what happens. Boop. Oh. Wow, look at this. Amazing. Do you remember there was a time when Netflix and Amazon was making all these live action adaptations? You recognize this TV show?
Who are you supposed to be? Oh, you guys
That-
are Phil and Lil.
Oh, thank God. Wow, that hurt my feelings real bad.
It took me a second.
You got
Now
it.
that you say it, you do look a little bit like Lil. Just kidding. that was-
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But yeah, that's really kind of like the whole thing, right? So we grab the container that we want, and then we will simply attach the image to that container. So it's just going to be lunch.append child, and then we're going to add the image. If this JavaScript totally loads every single time, then really on refresh, will this be here?
Yeah, it should be. It'll be below the container.
I think it takes a second to download, but yeah, it should be there whenever this decides to load. Let's get rid of the debugger. Oop. Oh, I'm sorry. Why did this not update? Why is there's no image here? Didn't change the source and input, right? I have this image here, and then I simply add the image tag, but I don't actually add a source to the image. So, and how do I update the image source? Yeah. If it seems silly and trivial, it's because I want it to feel that way. So on refresh, there it is. Cool, so it only took us like 20 minutes to build out this feature. And in the beginning, there was kind of this shakiness as to like, oh, you know what, maybe I can kind of do it. But how are we feeling now in regards to like, hey, I can add things to a page, no problem. Cool. I mean, you could do a bunch of things. So I want to talk about like how JavaScript is being pulled into your code. So in this index.html, notice I'm talking about two different script tags that I'm pulling in here. Because I'm pulling in both dank memes and index.js, that means that I will actually have access to everything in this file and everything in this file. Order will matter. So look at this right here. Dank memes comes first, and then index.js. That means that in index.js, did this file load already, yes or no? Yeah, it did. And so inside index.js, if I wanted to, if I drop the debugger, if I refresh, let's take a look at what dank memes has. It has a constant called dank memes. So if I'm back here on line 3, do I have access to a const called dank memes?
Yes.
And there it is. So if I wanted to pull in more things into my JavaScript, right, this is how I'm doing it. I put it in my JavaScript. I put my script tags in the right order. Cool. Let's take a look at something else.
Do those always go at the bottom of the body, or is that standard?
Let's talk about that right now. All right, so if I were to change the order and I were to refresh, it doesn't even finish. Dank memes or dank memes doesn't exist, right? Because again, it hadn't loaded yet. I want to talk about like where your script tag is and why that might be important. If I move my index.js, well, let me move this correctly back, right? If I were to move both of these to the top of the body, think about when and where your JavaScript code will download, load, and execute. If I were refreshed, it's going to pull in dank memes, it's going to pull in index.js, and it's going to download and run your code at the same time. Which means that if I query select container in index.js, will it exist?
Yeah.
Remember, container's all the way over here. I'm paused right here. Will a container exist? Let's take a look. Whoop. So let me try this line of code without the const. Just a quick old var. Take a look at lunch. Why did I get this error? Well, remember, it's going through this code. JavaScript does that read only in the first phase and then the execution. I'm trying to reference lunch on line 3. It read through on the execution, it hits line 3. So lunch technically is a variable that exists, but because I'm using const, does const hoist? No, so I don't actually have a reference to it here. What I'm trying to show you is all the different little weird bugs that can happen because now you understand what's actually happening. So if I actually try querying selector here, query selector, and I try grabbing the hashtag container, I get null. You can even see the fact that this debugger ran on line 3. What do you see on the page? The H1 didn't load, the container didn't load, nothing loaded, because if we look over here at the HTML, this is running before any of the HTML loads. Yeah? Are there any questions about the importance in terms of placement? That's a good question. So the original question, and your question, is sort of like what's best practice and what do we do with the scripts? I think in the beginning it makes sense to kind of put it here just to ensure that everything exists. Oftentimes I have seen the script inside the head tag. But there becomes a problem. If it's in the head tag, does any of the HTML exist? No, it doesn't exist. So how can we get around that? That's going to be part 2, and that's going to be like later on this afternoon. And so we'll talk about how do we ensure that the entire DOM loads before we kind of do anything, right? Because we want to make sure the HTML is there before we use the power of JavaScript to interact with the DOM. Cool? All right, let's kind of like just finish this README so we can talk about like some of the important things that are on here. So each one of these objects are known as nodes, right? So you can select them in different ways. You can do the get element by ID. You could do class name. You could do tag name. You can modify DOM nodes like we talked about, where once you actually have a reference to the object, you can change all of its key value pairs, like the properties. Then you can actually remove nodes as well. So like if you really didn't want to for whatever reason, let's query select this. Let's show you some cool stuff. This p tag. You see this double equal $0? Okay, I'm gonna kill this lecture early. This double equal $0 is just like quick reference that Chrome gives you. Whatever I'm selected on is $0 at that moment. So if I see $0, I don't have to query select it. If I'm just trying to play with it, I see $0, and I can run a method that will move. Remember, this is, you could see it, it's just a function, right? Did I invoke it? I invoked it, and it's gone. Are there any questions in terms of just manipulating the DOM, understanding the DOM is a tree, and then looking at the key value pairs at each one of those objects? All right, great. That's all I have for you this morning. I appreciate